Hello and welcome to episode 44 of Magic and the Other Guy. And you join Kevin and me sitting outside my home on the banks of Lake Wylie in Charlotte, North Carolina on a beautiful sunny afternoon. Kevin, how are you today?
I'm very well.
Jolly good. I never know what we're talking about. You do, we hope, know what we're talking about. Kick us off. What are we talking about today?
Well, you may recall last episode I introduced the topic with 3 letters.
Right.
Those being MTV.
Okay.
This time I'm going to introduce it with 3 numbers, and you'll know exactly what the topic is as I say them.
Okay.
007.
007, James Bond, License to Kill.
Didn't take you long.
James Bond, as Sean Connery used to say.
I was about to say the early iteration there.
He's my favourite James Bond too, actually. How about you? Who's your favourite James Bond?
I think if you break it down, probably he has to be. But my introduction to James Bond, you got to think about my age. I was born in '69. The first movie of his, definitely the first one I ever saw in the theater was Moonraker. So we were, 3 movies into Roger Moore at that point?
Okay.
I think that's right. I think he did Live and Let Die first.
He did.
The Spy Who Loved Me second.
Yeah.
And then Moonraker was third.
Yeah, beautiful stories, great movies. And that franchise has just gone on to bigger and better things. And even to this day, here we are in 2021, waiting for the next James Bond movie to be released.
Oh, always. Yeah, there's always a continual churning of the machine.
Yes. Now, talking of James Bond and the author of James Bond, Ian Fleming, you and I were having a chat only the other day, off air, about the movie Chitty Chitty Bang Bang.
Which is what kind of spurred me to think
Oh,
about
there we
this.
go.
It's a roundabout thing in the Ian Fleming world.
Yes, and it always strikes me as such a different story, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, to the James Bond stories. But yeah, there he is, Ian Fleming, stretching out. Now, my understanding is, I know we're slightly off topic talking about Chitty Chitty, but that was originally released, I think, as a book of 2 halves, maybe in a magazine format, and then it was put together as a book. But I do remember that as a kid, and loved the movie, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, but also loved the story as well, which is the book, very different to the movie. But I like very much Sean Connery. I think he plays a perfect James Bond, and I wonder who will be the next actor or actress to play James Bond. Have you heard any rumours about that?
There probably is some good rumor mill going, and I just don't know what it is.
Yeah.
But of course, we've had some great ones down the line, and I think everybody has their favorites, and then kind of they probably list them and what they like as the best, and when they thought is their least favorite. And
Yes.
they vary much more toward the end. I think they do on the front end. I think Sean is probably by far the most widely respected, but second. That could probably even be kind of controversial because I think Daniel Craig has done such a good job the past few years.
Very much so.
That it just represents a good franchise, sub-franchise with his versions.
Yeah, Daniel Craig, it always strikes me, and I think, I'm kind of misquoting somebody, but I want to go on the back of the strength of the quote is, Daniel Craig looks very dangerous on camera, and he does. I mean, he really looks the part.
Yeah.
Some actors that have played it in the past don't look as convincing, but Daniel, to my eye, most certainly does. Yeah.
Well, and two, they've definitely gotten darker and grittier.
Yeah.
In the latter ones, which is probably more true to how something would be in the real world.
Yes.
And they just allow that for more of that these days.
The early ones, the early 70s movies, always tended to revolve around very ambitious plans to take over the world with space technology. I seem to remember that being a very big feature of the James Bond films. But I do like the idea of Spectre, for example, being this evil empire and taking over the world in a more realistic way. I'm kind of intrigued by all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, well, speaking, it made me think when you say this, the space thing, Moonraker was, of course, the space.
Yeah.
If you look at any of them, it's the space James Bond movie. And how they were using, what was really the images and the prototypes of the space shuttle a number of years before our first real launch.
Right.
But those were the NASA-type space shuttles that they were using in the movie. I guess they, researched and got a lot of the information that they were leaking out to the public from NASA. To use as their basis.
But they're very cool. They're very cool movies, and obviously they've been highly successful. We don't need to say that, but I think one of the things that makes them a great success beyond the great stunts and the seemingly limitless budget that the studios have to produce the movies, is the continuation of the characters, although they're played by different actors and actresses over the years. But Miss Moneypenny and M and Q and James and Felix Leiter,
Yep.
they're all, they're such great characters. I mean, you can reel them off one after the other because we all know of them, right? We're all we have a relationship with them. We expect them to be in the next movie. And most of the time, they are in the next movie. I like all of that. Yeah, that's one thing that that's always impressed me, both with written novels and also in movies, is you have to have the continuation of the characters to be drawn into the story. You have to have some sort of relationship with them. Like, you want to feel involved and connected to them. Otherwise, why am I watching this movie? But
Yep.
that's something that James Bond movies do very well. You feel a connection. Invested, I suppose, is the word.
And you don't feel disconnected if they have changed actor or actresses.
You have to put up with that, yeah.
Because obviously James has changed, and then in the course they've switched over. The actors playing the other characters,
Right.
and they may cross over in different times with as the Jameses have changed.
Yes.
And such like that. But you just roll with it and keep going. So,
Yes, I mean, I think Judi Dench playing M was an absolutely seamless transition. Like, she was so good at playing that character.
Yeah. And now they have the young Q.
Yes, the young Q, absolutely. I call it that slightly. The relationship between, in this, we're talking about Judi Dench's portrayal of M, the Judi Dench character and James. I like that interplay between the two. You can see they're very connected to one another.
Yeah.
They have great respect for one another.
But
It's
will not
almost-
take any guff off either.
Exactly. It's almost like a mother and son relationship. And she obviously cares a great deal for him, but has to portray the idea that she doesn't care about
Yeah.
him.
And she has to put him in mortal danger. She will put him in mortal danger.
He's just an asset that needs to get a job done. But you can tell just with those very subtle looks of her eyes and the lines and the subtlety of the whole thing that she cares very deeply for him.
Yeah.
I like that. I get very invested in that. Yeah. I'm a big, you know that I'm attracted to details in all walks of life, whether it's real life or fantasy or whatever it is. But I like the details, like J.K. Rowling's portrayal of Hogwarts we talked about. But I like the details that the film director, producers, actors put into the movies, and also that Fleming put into his characters as well when he was writing them. I think that all works very well, and it's proven. The enduring popularity of the movies prove that, right? I think, yeah.
Yeah, and of course I wasn't around when they first started, but I kind of wonder, how they took off with Dr. No, how much of a hit it was in the beginning, or if it was a slow
Yeah.
burn to kind of word of mouth. Oh, you have to go see this, or I saw it and it was great. I've seen it, maybe a couple of times, and when it started becoming more of a franchise and an idea that it's bigger than itself, because you started getting product tie-ins and stuff like that around maybe Goldfinger or something like that.
Yeah.
The introduction of the Aston Martin DB5 was a big deal, and that led to I've seen the old press kits and stuff like that talking about the toys that are available and,
Really?
and such
Yeah.
that you can get, and that's kind of when I remember them starting. It was before my time, but looking back, I've had some of those and had the press kit and stuff like that. I've gotten through different means,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
well, trades. It's not like I heisted them or anything, but they've come and gone and such. But I see what the cool stuff they had in the '60s,
Yeah.
that were tie-ins and stuff like that. And really, it's funny. I was thinking about, I've told you many times that anything that we were into as a kid in our era, there was always almost inevitably a bubblegum trading card for it.
Sure.
And Moonraker had those, but I really don't remember any of the others having them after that.
I'd be surprised if they were.
For Your Eyes Only was the next one, and I don't believe it did.
Yeah,
But
okay.
there was the wax packs of Moonraker cards
Yeah.
with the bubble gum that I still have to this day.
I don't find that hard
my
to believe.
stack of Moonraker cards
Yeah.
are still there.
I know you love to collect things, so I'm not surprised that you still have them.
And then, as a kid, once I guess maybe Moonraker was the first one I saw, period. Again, I know it was the one in the theater, but then you start watching the older ones as they come on TV.
Mm-hmm.
They would show them on whatever Tuesday night movie or whatever. And
Yeah.
I always would watch any of them, be it multiple times or be it the first time, and I would go back. It wasn't too long before The Spy Who Loved Me became my favorite. And I think a high amount of that interest came just due to the Lotus. The submarine Lotus was
Yeah.
the hottest thing. Just, that is amazing.
Yeah, there are certain elements in the way that those movies are put together. And I'm thinking now, as we're chatting here, of typically having the cold open to the movie, straight into a scene. James Bond in mortal danger, typically driving down a road, and suddenly machine guns are in action and car chase. But you know, as that starts, you're waiting for the cut to the intro music.
Yep.
And that iconic music that we all know and love.
Well, and the barrel of the, you're looking through the barrel of the gun with
Looking
the,
through the barrel
with the
of the gun.
strifling.
And then usually the silhouettes of dancing models, or in past movies, probably not PC to use those any longer. But all of that, yes, it's like you're waiting for that moment for the cut to the music, and then you're into the.
And leading right into that, I'm not sure. I'd have to go back and find out when they kind of started this, but inevitably the song for the movie is sung by a pretty famous musical artist of the time.
Yeah, right. Yeah, yeah.
Carly Simon did "The Spy Who Loved Me," but before that was there. Well, what "Live and Let Die" was Paul McCartney and Wings, wasn't it?
Absolutely was.
Yes.
Yes.
So there, we
Yeah.
got to go back at least to the first Roger Moore. I'm sure they all had theme songs. We'd have to find out who sang them for the Connerys.
There would be, without any question, I'm going to predict that on Wikipedia we would find a page with
Oh, yeah.
that listed there. Yes.
And since then, we've had, more recently Adele and Madonna. Didn't Madonna do one? I seem to think she did. I think the new one that they are talking about putting out next is Billie Eilish,
Okay.
who's very contemporary right
Very
now
current,
and very,
yeah,
very
absolutely.
current. You're going to get a single out of the deal too. In fact, I've got.
Yeah, I mean, if you're performing the opening song for the next James Bond film, you've arrived, as they say.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're a hot commodity at that time.
You
Whether or not you
that's right.
continue to be one
Yeah.
or not. I mean, obviously Carly Simon has had quite a long, illustrious career and is considered, kind of a legend in her industry.
You get the Bond gig, you can tick that little box. I have arrived.
Exactly. But I even in the early, and I didn't. We've talked about this. We talked about albums and stuff. I never got a lot of albums, but I do have the Spy Who Loved Me soundtrack.
Oh yeah.
But I did get it on the clearance bin at Zayre department store.
Yeah.
But I've got it, and I'd pop that thing on and listen to Carly Simon, and they called it it was filmed in '77 or came out in '77 because it's the music that we know is called Bond '77 on that album, and it's a little more added to it. It's not just a traditional theme, and then there's a whole album of other ambient music throughout the film. I'm sure I haven't listened to it in about 40 years, but it's there.
Yes, the Walther PPK.
Walther
isn't that it?
PPK
Yeah,
was his
isn't that
standard
his
issue
standard
gun.
issue weapon. Yeah.
Or it
Well,
was not standard issue. It was the one he
exactly
chose.
right. We must correct that. Yes, it's the one he always wants to use, but it's not standard issue, which irritates Q immensely. Which is another great thing.
Yeah.
I like all that. That's more again those little details. I'm attracted to that instantly.
And I'm not by no means a firearms expert, but I mean it's a pretty small, little compact gun. I'm sure it doesn't pack the wallop that some others could, but I guess he figures it gets in a close situation, it's going to do what it needs to do, and he can.
I don't know. I am sure, and again, gentle listener, you may be aware of this, or I'm sure we could find this on the internet. I bet if we research the reason for that Walther PPK, somewhere in Ian Fleming's background, there would be a reason why he chose it. Because, yes, like you, I'm very, very far from expert on firearms, but my understanding is that Walther PPK was nothing particularly accurate or powerful that an agent would want to use.
It looks good, and it looks good in the hand
So
on
there is a
film.
reason.
I'll give it that.
There is
And
a
like I say, if
reason.
they wrote it into the book, it really didn't make any bother whether it's going to be on film or not. But at the time, the other thing, of course, getting back to this is the cars have really become stars of those movies themselves.
Of course, yeah.
Starting with the Goldfinger DB5.
Yes, yeah. And then BMW had quite a close connection to the movies. I'm sure there was a commercial.
I'm about to say that's
interest
where
there.
I kind of go
Yeah.
ugh, because it's blatant
Yeah.
product placement,
Well-
and it didn't fit at all.
But somebody's got to pay for those explosions that you love.
Oh, I'm sure. But yeah, we had that run. It was pretty much the Pierce Brosnan run, where he's all of a sudden driving German vehicles. I mean,
Yeah.
you're a British agent. You should not be driving German vehicles. It's okay when you abscond with one, but yeah, we got to keep it to the. And they did rectify that later when I think it was the first Daniel Craig came back and he was driving the Aston DBS,
Right.
and I think that's the one too. Is
Yeah.
Casino Royale was his first one. And he drove the vintage DB5 when he was in the islands.
Yeah.
With the Ferrari F355, with the lady in it, and they were kind of racing about the mountain roads.
Yes, that's right. He had the DB5 when they went up to the Scottish Highlands, right, with Judi Dench.
Well, that came much later, in a couple of
Yeah.
years ago, which was a great tie because, they had it in Goldfinger and I think Thunderball. Then it took a kind of hiatus, showed back up, I think, in Casino Royale, and then the one we're talking about was Skyfall, where everything is the villain has hacked everything,
Yeah.
so they can't drive her government issued Jaguar because there's too much electronics in it. So they pull the DB5 out of his warehouse where he stored all the stuff from his she put it away. She
right.
put it away with all the stuff from his flat because they thought he was deceased, and they could get out of town undetected.
Now, did you have a Corgi model or another manufactured model of the DB5 as a kid? Did you have that?
I did not have the DB5. I had back then I didn't have it. I've somewhat in trades and stuff like that, again, ended up with that size of the Lotus. That's the submarine. You push the bumper, the back flaps fall down and the side flaps come in.
Oh, cool.
And it had a little thing on top. You could fire 4 missiles out of the back of it, out of the louvers, off the back window.
I did have the DB5. I have a feeling it was Corgi, but I may be wrong on that.
Yeah,
but I do
was.
remember it had the bulletproof screen on the rear screen. You press a little button and the metallic screen shot up to protect the rear screen. And there was machine guns in the front grille, I think. Another button you pressed and the machine guns came out the front.
Yeah, and surely the ejector. The roof would flip up and it'd shoot a little red plastic man out of the top.
Boy, I wish I still had that now.
I know.
Now you've made me think about it. I wonder whatever happened to that.
No, I never. It's funny. I never had that one. Again, it's kind of what was by then. The stuff from the '60s and early '70s were kind of floating around in the '70s. So if some kid had one or something like that,
Yeah.
But they were probably still making those for a good while. And then, like I say, the Lotus took over as being the popular one. I had the Hot Wheel of the Lotus, but it really wasn't made to be the James Bond one. It was white and had a British flag on the hood, and they called it the Royal Flash, I think, was something like. I could be wrong on that, but I had the Hot Wheel of just the car.
Yes, another great aspect of those movies, which is attractive, possibly more now than it was as a younger kid watching the James Bond movies, was the beautiful international destinations. Those wonderful islands out in the Pacific, or I'm thinking of there's a set, I think it's based in China, where you have those little islands out in the bay.
Yeah.
The little volcanic islands, and they just look so pretty. And of course, trips to Monaco seem to be every other James Bond movie. There's a Monaco scene.
Well, inevitably we have to go around the world because the person that did the blueprints happens to have a little shack on a mountaintop at some faraway location that they have to get to. So, can you just imagine the budget it takes? Like, okay, we're going to film on this side of the world, but we're going to do 3 shots over completely around the world. Everybody pack it up.
I know.
We're heading over there. Make sure the stars are first class accommodations to get them there. And then we land, film, get back to the next location.
Yeah.
I'd say they have one of the crazier budgets in the film world.
And then after principal photography, they'll say, "Oh, we just needed a little pickup scene back in Monaco. Everybody back on the plane." Well, that's the world of Hollywood for you, I guess. One of my favourite scenes in imagined sets, I should say, talking about sets with James Bond, was the temporary MI5 HQ that was in the Queen Mary.
Oh yeah,
in
For Your
Hong
Eyes
Kong
Only,
Harbour,
wasn't
which was on this. It's on this side, and I remember they'd done this wonderful idea. If you walked into the set and they built their office inside the ship that was leaning over at 45 degrees.
Yep.
So there's this sort of juxtaposed position between the set being at 45 degrees and the floor of the office being at 90 degrees. I thought it was really cool.
Absolutely. Yeah, I remember that one was, we watched that one a bunch because a friend I was kind of hanging out with around that age, I'm 7th grade, something like that. And we never had it at our house, but he had HBO.
Okay.
And it would come on, it was regular rotation on HBO because it had been out the year before or something like that. And so we watched that one numerous times. And then I didn't see that one at the theater. And then I remember Octopussy would have been next.
Yeah.
And then I did see that one at the theater, and I didn't see A View to a Kill. So it was almost like I was on a on-off love affair with seeing these movies, I guess. And I did see the Dalton one, I think, was the next one, the first Timothy Dalton.
Yes. Now he never struck me as a particularly popular.
I think
James
I think
Bond.
usually when people list them, he's like the last choice.
Yeah, it's unfortunate for him, really.
Yeah. And then it was George Lazenby that took over. Lazenby, whichever.
Yeah, I'm never
Whichever
sure
is the
which
correct
way it is.
pronunciation.
Right.
Pronunciation. But anyway,
Yeah.
so it was his turn at the role, but he only did the one film on Her Majesty's Secret Service.
Now, why did he only star in one movie? Was there a problem with his contract? Did they not like him? As far as
think
I
it-
remember, he was okay.
Yeah, I think so. I think he did a good job. I think it was his own choice that he did not want to continue playing that role. Though he did continue acting, it wasn't like he left the business. I think for whatever reason, he just didn't have an interest in doing another one.
Well, if it was his choice, I mean, it could have been any number of reasons. I mean, I don't know, but maybe it was simply a moral choice that he didn't want to play a character that used a gun. Who knows? But
Yeah,
he
you never
obviously
know.
went on to, as you say, he went on to a long career in movies. So good luck to him, as they say.
Yeah, yeah. But even though if it was the one episode in the franchise or movie in the franchise, it was a very pivotal episode. In it is the one that he gets married, and the wife Tracy is assassinated shortly thereafter. I think on the drive away, from what I recall, something like that.
Teresa Draco,
Yep,
known as Tracy.
Tracy. James and Tracy.
James and Tracy Bond, yeah. Yeah, and they never stayed married for very long.
Now, like I said, I think it was even the drive away from the wedding is best. It was definitely on the honeymoon or something
Right.
like that. It was not long before they were attacked on the road.
Yes, James Bond strikes me as one of those characters who's not supposed to be married for very long.
No, you throw in the element, but we're not going to let this storyline carry on very much longer.
Yeah.
But another thing I liked in the movie, and people kind of forget about this one. Everybody obviously knows the DB5 we've talked about, and the
Yeah.
Lotus, and the later ones with Roger Moore. But there actually is an Aston Martin that he uses on Her Majesty's Secret Service that not as many people notice, but it's in the opening scene at the beach, and it's I think the one he's driving after the wedding or on the honeymoon, and it's Aston DBS. I'm sorry,
DBS, yeah.
So look that up. I mean, you might have some moments when you see that is an Aston.
Yeah, that's right. It wasn't the DB5, it was the DPS that made an appearance in that
Yeah,
movie.
yeah, and only that one.
Yeah.
So then after that, then we started the Roger Moore era.
Which, I mean, Roger Moore had a long and successful career as James Bond.
Yeah, essentially, I think a 10-year run, if you look
Yeah,
at it, somewhere
that's-
around there.
Yeah, and that was the era, I want to say early 70s. Right?
Probably mid 70s to mid 80s, somewhere
When
there.
that's my memory of going to the cinema on a Saturday afternoon as a kid. You're going to the cinema and watching anything. But the arrival, we've touched on it earlier on in the podcast, but the arrival of those James Bond movies in the summer was just such a great moment. Whether it was summer or winter release, can't remember. But I do remember sitting in the cinema, and at the time in England, and perhaps it was the same in the States, if you were in the cinema, you could stay there all day long. You just buy a ticket and sit there and you just watch the movie over and over and over again. You didn't have to leave after one
I've heard of
screening.
that, and I think that may be more of an English thing or other country
Right.
thing. I think in the U.S. you could, but if they kind of noticed you were doing that, they're probably going to shuffle you out the door.
I don't think in England they ever really cared. So my school friends and I would typically arrive at the Curzon in Loughborough for a 1 p.m., 12:30 in the afternoon, 1 p.m. screening. And we would stay there until the last bus home to the village, which was probably 7 or 8 o'clock at night. So, we made a full day of it, but we just sit there glued to the screen, watching the James Bond movie over and over, yeah.
Well, honestly, if there's not some huge crowd and you're taking up seats that can be sold, I mean, why not let you,
They never minded. And those matinee shows in our little town, there was hardly anybody there.
Yeah.
It was a great time to go. I mean, I have wonderful memories. As you know, I still enjoy the cinema very much now, as you do. But I still enjoy to this day going to a cinema for a matinee showing when there's hardly anybody there, and there is something magical. I'll always have this feeling. I think I'll never lose it now. When the lights dim and the movie starts.
Yeah.
It's just a magical moment. And I remember that from being a kid, 10, 11, 12, and I still have it to this day. But yeah, those James Bond movies definitely did it because there was such a big moment in the year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I tell you, now that I think about it and you mentioned that, when I went and saw Moonraker, that might be the very first movie that, I wasn't accompanied.
Right.
Like my mom just dropped me off.
Yeah.
It seems about because we didn't go to the movies a lot. Movies cost money, so
Sure.
we didn't go all the time.
Yeah.
But usually it was something that Mom and I could go see together. She took me to see Star Wars. She took me to see Close Encounters, or the one of the Peanuts movies or something like that. It was Disney movies
Right.
and stuff like that. All
Yeah.
the Herbies, whatever of that era. But it just may be coincidence that we're talking about it. But Moonraker might have been the first one where I was just dropped off and. I'll be waiting outside when you're done and come on out because she had no interest in seeing it. So I guess it's kind of, that bit of growing up right then.
There's just something about the Bond movies that sticks in my memory that, back in the 70s, in a little cinema in England, the sound system wasn't very good, as you may imagine. But I have this memory of the Bond movies, the sound, the audio exploded around the cinema. They just nailed it with the best technology they had at the time, and that's one of my memories. Is the audio was fabulous, the special effects, but also the incidental music and all of it just seemed it's as much about sound as anything else. Which, again, I'm far from expert on almost anything, but I think most memorable movies will always have a great combination of visual and audio, and when the two mix together very well, Jaws is a classic example, I suppose. Of
the
that,
more
but
you can immerse the audience member into the storyline,
Yes.
and into the environment you want them to be in, that's all the better.
and audio does that. And you can say another one is you just mentioned Star Wars earlier on, and of course the Star Wars theme or the Emperor's theme or the Empire theme, the March theme, but they're such well-known classic cinema music. And the Bond movies, we touched on it earlier on, the Bond movies are the same. It draws you in as soon as you hear those opening sounds of the violins and whatever it is, you get drawn into it. And the Bond movies absolutely continue to do that, I'm sure. Yeah.
And they were kind of, let's say Moonraker was maybe 79, so let's say I'm 10 years old. It's one of those that you're okay letting your 10-year-old go see.
Yeah.
It's somewhat violent, but not overly. And there's always that little smattering of humor.
Yes.
Between Q and Bond and Moneypenny and Bond. There's always that, and that kind of tongue-in-cheek humor thrown into it. And of course, again, I loved anytime they had a vehicle on screen, I was into it, and anything like that. So it was, and to this day, they have gotten grittier with but they're still not over the top. They're not like, going to be so violent that they're just, turn a lot of people off. They still have a big mass appeal to a lot of people across the board.
Tarantino hasn't started directing.
No, I
those
think it'd be
movies.
quite a different Bond if he does. So I love his genre, but I don't think it's quite right for this.
Right. Yeah, no, he doesn't need to do the Bond movies. No. And again, as we're recording this podcast here, sat on the porch outside of my home here, we must be very close to the delayed release of the next installment of the Bond movies, which will be Daniel's last time in that role, correct?
I think so. Yeah. Again, I haven't paid enough attention. I think with everything in the past year and a half and movies being held, released, not released, released onto home video or streaming, I can't keep up right now. So
It's coming,
when it'll
right?
show up, it'll show up. Oh, I know. Yeah, you're right. Exactly. Before COVID started, they were showing the trailer. Yes.
Yeah.
I know. Because again, how do I tie it in? He's driving an Aston V8 in this one.
There you go.
And I was like, ooh, I love that car. So yeah, it is. I think it's been in the can for quite some time, and they've been.
It has. COVID got
I've
in the way of
forgotten
it,
that.
and then I think it was very close to being released and delayed again. But touch wood and all the rest of it, I think we're getting close to the point of
I think it was I think it was supposed to maybe come out April of 20,
Yeah.
and then everything just shut down or something, or not too far after that. So yeah, I'd completely forget. See, I put it to the back of the recesses of the mind for the past year and a half. It's pretty much ready to go as far as we know, so we should have one hopefully soon. It'd be great. It'd be great to see it in a theater.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, hopefully we can make that happen.
Yeah. Well, thanks for that subject, because James Bond is one of those movie franchises that has been with us since we were small children. We just mentioned it, going to the
We're over
cinema
50
the
years.
first time, and here we are. I'm very close now to, I'm getting very, very close to 60. But they've always been there right throughout our lives, and of course, millions of others have gone through the same thing. And I have no doubt whatsoever that movie franchise will continue on way after we've shuffled off this mortal coil. and later generations will be as immersed in them as we were as kids and as teenagers and as adults. I like all of that. It's kind of a cool thing.
Yeah. And when I think about it too, they're all pretty good. They're all good. There's not really a one that was like, oh my gosh, they were all except this stinker.
You're
in
always,
the
you're
mix.
always going to have a favorite of anything.
Yeah. Now there might be two exceptions that people kind of think about or don't think about, depending on how you look at it. Is was it the David Niven Casino Royale
Yeah.
comedy? And then the other one I think that gets dismissed is the Never Say Never Again, which was when Connery returned in the early '80s. I'd have to research about how it's perceived, but a lot of people just dismiss it as part of the franchise. It was an own independent kind of thing and didn't stick. So I think those two are always kind of the fringe players
Yeah.
in this grand drama.
You just made me think about the titles of the movies, and are we getting to the point now where we're running out of possibilities for names for Bond movies? Where never say never again, ever again.
Exactly.
But whatever they call them, they are wonderful things. And thanks, Kevin, for bringing that topic up. That was fun. I enjoyed that. Well, we better say goodbye, had we not?
We should.
See you again on another episode of Matcher and the Other Guy. Bye for now.
Bye for now. All right, we got it.